Welcome, everyone, to Stepping Into Your Leadership. I'm your host, Christine Courtney. Our goal here is to give you some actionable takeaways that will help you lead your teams. Thanks for joining us on this leadership journey. Let's get started. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Stepping Into Your Leadership. I'm very excited to have Coach Extraordinaire Greg Shamie back in the studio today. Hey, Greg.
Hey, Christine. How are you?
I'm good. And I had to have you because we're talking about one of your favorite topics, which is really about motivation and motivating teams. And Greg is the consummate professional when it comes to motivating work teams, but also motivating sports teams. You name it. He's Coach Shamie all the time. So I'm excited to have you here so we can talk about this topic that seems to be very interesting to a lot of people.
Yeah, excited to get into it with you, and phenomenal topic. So let's do it.
All right, so let's just give everybody like a little bit of an overview. Like, what is motivation? When people say that they need to get better at motivating others or motivating their teams, what do you think? What does motivation mean to you as a leader? How would you define it for people? And we're talking right now in terms of management, but it might slip over into other areas as well.
Yeah, I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is energy, and where is the energy level? I guess you could also, in business terms, use engagement if you want more businessy, right? Like, what is my engagement level? How into what I'm doing am I into it? So, for example, with my direct reports, I like to have a dashboard, and I want to have each player has their own sheet where I could I'm measuring their engagement, I'm measuring what their challenges are, what's weighing them down, seeing all the different elements that's impacting their energy or excitement or engagement around what they're doing. And this vacillates. This vacillates for me as a leader. This vacillates for them. But as my job as their leader is to be aware of where they are and continually assessing that, and then trying to up it and amplify it.
Yeah, it's interesting. When you say that, I was just trying to imagine walking into a workplace. It is a bit energy, right? Feeling that vibration, so to speak, of where people are. And you don't always know if people are motivated, but you certainly know when they are not. Every single one of us has walked into the office or a office where that is the case. Like, not to pick on the folks at the DMV, but a lot of times you'll see that there. At least some of the offices that I've been in, not all of them.
Yes. What you're hitting on for me, again, I'm looking at the individual, and then I'm looking at the company or the group or the team, right? And so you have what we describe as a company culture, which I think is perfect to what you're saying. You walk in, you get a sense of that culture. Is it culture where people are lifting each other up, energy is high, ball drops, people pick it up and are ready to attack that problem? Or is it that, body language, nonverbal cues, crossed arms, heavy, very serious, could be very negative, or is it a balance between the two? But you're picking up what that energy is, what that culture is for the individual and for the group.
Yeah. And I think so many times we'll hear young managers say, I want to be a good motivator. I want to be somebody that motivates my team. And I think that in some ways we're all hearkening back to a time where we have felt especially motivated or excited to be part of something, and that kind of energy and enthusiasm and connection that brings with it. And I was just curious if you, before we get into this logistics of how, like, if you can share a time when you felt especially motivated as a team member, not as the team coach, but as the team member. And what do you think sparked that?
Yeah, it's a great question. We love to ask our folks that we're working with this question as well, because everything great starts with us and then builds out to how can we do that with others. So the first thing that pops into my mind is this experience I actually had with a team where we were going to support a client, and it was 4 of us. And we, first of all, the amazingness of this group was that we all had different strengths, and we all knew each other's strengths. So like knowing each other's strengths and areas for growth was like a really great piece for us as a group. And then we kind of knew who the driver was in terms of preparation and breaking it down. And we were motivated by each other's excellence. So
Mm.
each person brought a different weapon into the arena, and they were the best at that. And we knew that. And then we could take that into the client and really light that up for them. That was inspiring to me. That dynamic was really inspiring to me. So playing with better people, playing with good people who have different skills than you, that's definitely something that I think about in terms of something that motivates me.
I think also when just listening to your story, it sounds like you probably also had something that you were fighting for together, like some sort of shared goal or something bigger than, you know what I mean? Like you had something in your sights, kind of.
Yeah, 100%. We were united on delivering excellence to that client.
Yeah.
And so that goal was bigger than just me. It was bigger than us. It was something we were all striving to achieve. And that was clear. That was
Yeah.
very clear that we all wanted that and that we were going to bring our best games to make that happen.
Yeah.
Right.
I love it. Now, there's a lot of different theories out there on motivation, right? What is it that motivates people? I mean, there's been so much scientific look into trying to tap this because it's so powerful, right? If you can get good at motivating teams, you could get good at winning, you can increase performance. And that's what everybody wants to do in business, in sports, in you name it, right? That's the name of the game, is increasing performance, and motivating teams and individuals seems to be a big part of that process. So what are some of the theories or the studies out there that can give people some kind of understanding of ways to go about this?
Yeah,
What's one of them that you look at?
I mean, first you want to really look at what you're saying, which is understanding what is behind motivation. And the first thing that we do is break down the difference between extrinsic motivation and intrinsic, right? So we look at those two differences, extrinsic being the external carrots that people put out in front of folks, bonuses, increase in pay, benefits, different types of things you can do in the office, food, ping
Employee
pong.
of the month.
What? Yes.
Employee of the month.
Yeah,
That kind of thing.
again, there are positives to that, but the word that comes to mind is they're temporary. They're short term, right? Whereas the intrinsic, you really start to look at what's important to each individual. How do you tap into what their needs are and their sense of accomplishment in getting, in completing a task or feeling excited and engaged about what they're doing in their work. That's the intrinsic. Actually, I was thinking about this in terms of my daughter playing soccer because she's a defensive player and she is a very, very good defensive player. And we've been trying to motivate her to be more aggressive and try and add to her strength of being great at defense by getting some more aggressive offensively. And so the extrinsic motivation was, okay, if you can get a goal, you can get X, right? We'll go for your favorite ice cream. So, but the beautiful thing is,
tell me it wasn't just their favorite ice cream, Greg. That was what my dad did for me back in the 80s,
well, no,
70s,
but I mean,
80s.
listen, hey, ice cream is
Motivating.
Motivating, absolutely. What a treat, especially if it's good. But the cool thing was she had an incredible weekend last weekend where she scored a goal in the Saturday game and she scored a goal in the Sunday game. So back-to-back goals. And I could see not only the intrinsic motivation happening, but then this intrinsic was happening because she was getting validation from all the different angles. And then she was feeling, wow, this feels good to score. Right. And so now she has motivation to score. So she's more aggressive moving forward. You know what I mean? So I think it's a pretty interesting example of using extrinsic to get it started, but then the goal is to get it to be intrinsic.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, I love when a defender scores. I mean, there's nothing better on the sidelines than watching a defender score. But Greg and I could talk about soccer forever. But anyway, the thing related to that too, which you made me think of, is that extrinsic motivation, sure, it's there. It's something, it's a little carrot. But the reality is it makes very clear to her what the values are of the people setting that extrinsic goal. And that probably understanding that someone that she cares about and respects, like you or her coach or her mom or whoever, is if they're putting that out there as an extrinsic goal, that somehow they feel like, oh, this is important for my growth, or this is important for me to somehow master or have purpose around. And I think for a young person, in the case that you just described, I hadn't thought of it before, but that extrinsic motivation can be an indicator of like, oh, this may be part of who I am because I care a lot about these people and I identify as one of them. Therefore, this may become an intrinsic part of who they are,
Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
And of how they're motivated.
it's fascinating. And then, Daniel Pink, who is an incredible author of many different books, I'm thinking
Mm-hmm.
specifically of the book Drive, which is all
Yeah.
about motivation, has done a ton of work on this and unpacks a lot of studies around motivation. And they're really interesting. And he comes away with these three key elements that really work against that old school carrot and stick piece, which, again, can give you short term benefits maybe, but long term, you're going to end up deflating and turning someone off potentially. And so his three pieces are autonomy, mastery, and purpose. That these three elements are the core elements for motivating. Autonomy being the desire to be self-directed, right? How are we figuring out what is important to them and helping empower them on and activating them to go after it, giving them the ability to make those decisions. That is huge. I mean, we hear this word empowerment all the time. It's very connected to strong delegation too.
Mm.
If I'm an effective delegator, then I'm really empowering my direct reports to take on a task, understand the bigger picture of that task and why they're being chosen, and then go after it and hit that by the deadline with excellence. And that's going to, again, give me room to go after bigger things while they dig into those other things that need to get done
Yeah.
at a good level. The mastery piece, huge. It's my human urge to improve my skills and abilities. And I mean, if my boss cares about me getting better and wanting to improve and learn and expand my capabilities, then I'm going to be excited because not only am I working for a paycheck, but hey, I'm developing to become a better all-around person, worker, team member, you name it.
Yeah, I bet that also kind of relates to growth mindset too, right? If you're creating an environment where you're really focused on growth mindset and growth instead of perfection and always improving, you're going to have so much longer term success. But you're right. It does take a while, but you see that kids that are used to having to work for something as opposed to people that are given it, it's just so much difference
Yeah.
in the outcomes long term,
Yeah, and I mean that's a really interesting topic to discuss, especially if someone fails or drops the ball and they don't have the motivation to be able to attack that problem, that grit, that resilience, that ability to rebound, right? All these things are, again, I'm looking for, depending on who my players are, what their strengths and weaknesses are, I'm looking to see how people are responding to challenges. That becomes a major thing that I'm focusing on in terms of helping my direct reports grow and continue to excel.
Yeah. And I think sometimes in the elements of mastery, that's our job. And we talk about this a lot. If you listen to this podcast regularly, it's a lot about the vocabulary and the terms that you use with them when things happen, like in the moment, so that you can also point out to them, like, I know you feel like frustrated by this, or I know you feel like this wasn't a success, but let me show you from my perspective what I can see in your growth. And pointing out those growth points for people is so much of an aha, but it also grows. It's like it grows within them and they start to notice it. If you can see people's growth and start to observe it and reflect it back to them, I find that can be a really great part of motivating that idea of mastery.
Yeah, what's that phrase? Glows and growth. Right? I think it's
What?
glows, like you're highlighting those moments, and then it's around growth, right? So I think I've heard that term before, like glows and
Yes.
growth, which
Yes.
I thought is funny, but
Yeah, or Tony Robbins will say, kind of where the attention goes, the energy flows, that kind of thing. So if you put attention towards that's where you're going to get more energy and enthusiasm and performance ultimately. So you covered autonomy and mastery. And the third one, you want to talk about the
yeah,
third one?
the idea of purpose, and this is really the desire to contribute to something bigger than me. Could be bigger than me, I think, is the key piece there. And I think these three key elements that he uncovers, Daniel Pink in Drive, I think come down to these 6 human needs that we have, which are, we want certainty, we want significance, variety, connection, growth, and contribution. Like those 6 elements really are the essential needs. And then I'm kind of like trying to figure out what are the needs to each of the people I'm leading. And that's going to help me play to those. Like most of us want certainty, growth, and contribution out of those. So
it's interesting because I think Daniel Pink, I love him. I've heard him speak a couple of times and I've read his books as well. And I think he does such a great job of pulling things that are out there together in a way that's very memorable and easy for us to digest. And I was reading about Drive originally, when we were teaching it to some of our folks at work. And a lot of what he talked about comes from a few different theories out there, but one of them is this self-determination theory that was Edward Deci and Richard Ryan. And I think it's really cool because they talked about autonomy, competence, and connection. And really those are included in what Pink looked at their stuff as well as a bunch of other things. But I think, he talks about autonomy, mastery, and purpose. And I love this idea of autonomy, competence, which is really kind of mastery, right? And connected, and being connected to others, being connected to something greater, a purpose, whatever. And it was helpful for me to look back at that because sometimes I think of purpose as so related to, a bigger goal or a bigger reason for my living or why I do what I do. But also sometimes for me, it's just as easy as like, I believe in my team and I want to do this for Greg, or I want to do this for Tatiana, or whoever. You know what I mean? Like if you're part of a team like that, I've seen people like at sports, sometimes they pull together just for each other, even if it's not about a medal or a trophy,
Yeah, I love that. That simple attack of it, I think, can be very, very potent and also rewarding. Like it's going to impact the energy of me and of you, right? So just those little recognitions.
So Greg, I think you do this stuff all the time with people. Like you are very good at motivating people. We laugh, you come into a room of people who are just dead tired, exhausted, stressed out, and some really tough groups in the past of large numbers, and you start to turn that around sometimes with just your energy, right? I think if I was to diagnose you for a second, in a positive way, I think one, it starts with your energy that you come in, regardless of how they are, you're going to be kind of blown away by the energy that you bring. And then secondly, what I've noticed that you do in terms of motivating folks is you get them talking, even if it's not good what you hear, right? Even if you hear, but something about their truth of what's going on with them, which I think gives them a sense of like, okay, my voice matters in this moment or to this person. And so now you start to sway them slightly. And then I think you really give them some sort of enjoyment out of the moment so that they're like, oh, this is going to be fun, or this is going to be interesting, or I matter here in this room. I'm going to feel connected. So you usually do something that makes them feel connected to other people. And then you explain, this is what we're going to work on. This is what we're going to try to, in this short period of time, try to master or go for growth. And this is why it matters. This is the purpose of why it matters. So I would say that those are some of the things I see you do very quickly in a short period of time with a group, but you've been doing this forever. You've also been on teams forever. When you were a little kid, you played sports. You've been basically on teams and believing in this idea of motivating teams forever. But I'm wondering, for the new manager or managers that maybe aren't even new but need to get better at this, what are some things they can do in their daily life? What are some tips that they could do that could increase motivation, whether it's extrinsic, intrinsic? Because clearly managers need both. They need to be cultivating both extrinsic and intrinsic motivation factors. So what do you say?
Well, the first thing is you have to be focused on building connectivity with who you're interacting with, who you're leading. You're a new manager, you have direct reports, you're building relationships, you're building trust, right? At the core of it is this glue called trust, and we have to earn that. And so we really have to start with that. And then, I really love the way you broke down what I do. That is like, I was like, thank you and good night. It was very, very good. I mean, I guess that's my approach. But one of the things that came up for me as you were saying it was, yes, I come in with my authentic energy, right? You can't be Greg Shamie, right? I can't be Courtney, but you got to bring your energy, what that is, what that real authentic energy is, and you got to bring it into with the space with purpose and with intention, and then you got to meet them where they're at without judgment. That's, I think, why I'm successful, is because I always meet my participants. I try to meet my participants where they're at, and I don't judge what's coming back at me. I observe and I just see, because if I judge it, oh, why are they in such a bad mood? Oh my God, they're so negative. Oh, geez, why are they so heavy? I start to put these labels on them and then put them into a box, and then I can't help free them. My goal is for them to produce results and keep them engaged, right? And so I want them to feel excited about their work. So if they're not, I need to meet them there and I need to create trust that they can share what's blocking them, what is stopping them from succeeding, what's weighing them down, so that I can start to see some of those elements, and then I can start to help to become a servant leader in removing maybe an obstacle or two. Even just listening to them can help to lighten that load. And that's why, one of the major tips is the importance of the one-on-ones, and, giving that 30 minutes a week for every direct report I have scheduled, sacred as much as I can, keeping that and really letting it be about them and us, but starting with them. So meeting them where they're at, and then just assessing without judgment, and then helping move from that place to a more fruitful place.
That's really great. And I hear people say that all the time, meeting them where they're at, but what that means, sometimes we don't know. And I think when I hear you say that, I reflect on when I was a young person and a young manager. I would be very threatened by folks that were not happy at work or were angry with me or any of those things, right? I took it very personally. And I think my reaction oftentimes was to either ignore it, because somehow ignoring it allowed me to keep going, or allowed me to think it would just go away, or, not deal with it to a large degree. And one of the things when I hear you say that I've found for myself is, for instance, I was just leading a workshop the other day with a company, and one of the guys was really angry about being in this. It was an all-day workshop. He was really angry. It was mandatory that he be there. Right? It was mandated by the company that they come. He did not want to be there for his, for anything. And it was very obvious. It was obvious in what he would say. It was obvious in his energy. And I was thinking about how when I was younger, I would have just ignored that guy, focused on who was in the room. I mean, sometimes you have to, right? Focused who was there and present. But the problem is that his energy was so overwhelming and so blatant. Do you know what I mean? That it was affecting everybody, right? Everybody's watching to see how you're going to react to this person anyway. It's a little bit of a power struggle in some ways. And then I thought to myself, so then I just asked him a couple questions, out loud in front of everybody. And there's probably 40, 45 people in the room. And I was like, what's going on? Let's call him Bob. Bob, it's okay if you don't want to be here. Like, it's okay. You don't have to have a goal for today. You don't have to have anything. I understand. Like, it's all right. You're not going to hurt my feelings. And he said, look, it's not you, lady. Basically, it's not you, lady, but I work the third shift. So that means that I've been up, by the end of this day, I will have been up for 24 hours. Like, I value my time off. And by me coming to your session today, I don't get to do anything to prepare for my week. I don't get to cook my food. It's going to get me through the week. I don't get to do my shopping. I don't get to do anything. Like, I've been up now. I don't know how I'm going to keep my eyes open, to be honest with you. And all of a sudden, I just had immense empathy for his situation. I would never have known that. And I was like, you're right, Bob. That sucks. Like, that's tough. And I'm going to do this today just for you. Our whole goal, everybody, is to do this for Bob today. Come on. Because Bob is here. And there were 3 people there that had run third shifts that I didn't know. Right. So that meant they worked through the night. So they had been up on working since, 2 a.m. And then they come in here all day long. You know what I mean? So anyway, that gave me a whole level of empathy. Talk about meeting them where they're at. Like, all of a sudden, instead of judging them, which I would have before, like, what a pain in the ass he is, or why do I have to, I wouldn't have said that out loud, but in my head. So anyway, I thought that was
very rich,
interesting,
Christine.
I wouldn't
It's
have known
extremely rich story that I relate to deeply, and I think is part of the reason why I'm successful around motivating groups, is because I don't ignore that voice or that energy in the room that is wanting to either take it down. I embrace it, right?
Yeah.
Which is what you did. It makes me also think of, for new managers and experienced managers, the importance of the phrase, I never know what's happened to you before you've entered my space, the space we're in, right? I don't know what's happened to you before you are here with me. And therefore, I'm not going to make any assumptions around what has happened to you. So if your energy is low, your energy is low. I'm going to meet you there and try and figure out why it's low just by listening to you and asking questions. Again, 2 phenomenal tips. Great leaders ask great questions to try and figure out what's going on in order to motivate and excite, right? Like that's really it. And the second thing is listen. Just like the act of listening changes your whole perspective. Once you heard that participant share what was going on for them, your whole perspective changed, right? And then you included everyone in that to embrace that situation, and suddenly the dynamic changed.
The dynamic changed. It not only changed, but at the end of it, and I was there for 8 hours or something. But when we finished, I mean, he must have been outright exhausted, right? This isn't a young man either. And he came up to me and he said, and this is a guy who works shift work, building things, right? So he comes up to me and he says, I have to hand it to you. He said, I didn't want to be here, as you know, but I got something out of today and I'm glad I came. And I'm like, all right, win. You know what I mean? It's not like he's going to say, I wish that I could get my day back. Maybe he does. But the fact of the matter is, I think there's a lot to learn in that moment of it. And I appreciate you pointing that out because it made me reflect on it. I wouldn't have reflected on that unless you said that today. So I appreciate that. What's another tip? So I think you're right. I think meeting them where they're at to build some trust, listening to them. Those are 2 tips. What else? What's another tip that people can do for motivation?
I mean, we talk about this all the time, but this 3-to-1 rule of really, we've already mentioned it a little bit today, but really highlighting catching them doing something great. Right, that piece, the spotlighting recognition, like how are we highlighting what they're already succeeding at in ways that are, specific and in ways that uplift them and continue to tell them to continue on and go for more.
Yeah, I call it positive attention, but it's the same thing. Like, can we give many more snippets of positive attention? Because a lot of people we find leave companies and they're like, oh, they never said anything nice to me. They were only focused on, the things I was doing wrong, never the things I was doing good. And I think those moments where you can point out are really clear. I think another one that I would say, another tip is to set clear goals. I think it's very helpful. And you mentioned it before, is if you know what you're all going for and people can see a clear goal and they can measure themselves up against it and they can see that, can be very, very helpful.
On the goal front, as this comes up all the
Uh-huh.
time in the motivation workshops, is you got to see, like, first of all, I as the manager am my direct report's accountability partner. Right. And so, yes, I'm having them come up with goals for themselves. And I have our team goals that we're going for that are aligned with the company goals. And so my job, though, is to keep it visual, to keep the goals up in front of us. Because what happens is I write a goal, I put it in my book, and then I don't look at it until my performance review. And what happens if I'm not looking at it? If I don't see it, I'm not doing it. Right. So as a manager, when it comes to goals, yes, we want to continually talk about it. We want to bring it up. We want to see it. How are you doing with this? What progress have you made? What's not working? Right. Really dissect it. And that becomes part of my job as a manager, is to really be checking in on that and to make it visual and, on the table in front of us continuously.
I love that. All right. So that's a good one of setting goals, make it visual, make it up there continually. What else, Greg?
I think we talked about spotlighting recognition, the celebrating mini milestones. Like when you're doing a project, a lot of people they celebrate at the end, but they forget to celebrate along the way the little wins. And I think, great coaches, if you look at sports they create a culture where the team members are looking to highlight the other team members and catch them again doing things great. And that post game, okay, 3 shout outs, or you're in your meeting and you're starting your team meeting in your boardroom, who wants to say something positive about something you've seen someone else do on this team? Let's start off with a couple of those or end with those, right? Suddenly the dynamic, the culture changes once we start to do that. So I can't highlight that enough.
Great. I know you mentioned it before, but I want to highlight it again, is this idea of getting good at delegation. Because if you can get good at delegation, you get autonomy, mastery, and purpose can all be wrapped up in a great delegation, right? And so I think giving up some sort of control sometimes around things that people want to do. So if you're having one-on-ones where people are like, this is something that interests me, then that's where you need to go for it. Try to find ways to give them things they can own in that area, and it will pay off. It's going to be hard in the beginning for you, but I think that what's great about that is it gives them autonomy, it gives them a chance for mastery, and it gives them a sense of purpose. So I think that's really important.
My last one is lead by example. And I was reading an article on Coach K, 1980 to 2022, Duke Blue Devils, 3 gold medal, Olympic gold medals, 5 national titles. I mean, forget about it, right? He created a culture that was just one of, we're not just a team, we're a family, right? It's your second family. And that wasn't just him; it was every single person that played a part in creating the place for them to be able to come together, work together, and succeed. And, he says, starts with me. I have to bring my authentic motivation to everything I'm doing, and that's going to ripple, right? So if you're a new manager, it starts with you, right? And what is your why? What is your purpose? What is your bigger vision? And what is the company's why? And how are you communicating that? So all of those things start to really create a dynamic that is going to be more connected and more impactful and more productive if I start to lead with me.
I'm going to harken back to one of your and my favorite Coach Taylor from Friday Night Lights.
Yes.
And he would always say, what? Clear eyes, full hearts.
Can't lose.
And if you think about that, clear eyes, goals, what I'm focused on, full hearts, purpose, connection, the team, can't lose,
yes.
Right? Is that part of that mastery and getting better? And so that's going to be my mantra for
Coach
today.
Taylor.
When
Coach
I think
Taylor
of this.
always
Love
inspires and motivates me. Love that character.
All right, Greg, thank you so much. I know we could go and we'll talk about this topic again and again because there's more to dissect and uncover. But thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you. What a pleasure.
Thanks, everybody, for listening. I'd like to give a special shout out to our podcast producer, Richard Francisco. Check out our notes for any details. And if you get anything out of this, please follow us. And if you enjoy it, please take a moment to rate us or write a comment. It will mean the world to us. We'd love to hear from you. And if you just can't get enough, follow me on TikTok and check out tlpnyc.com/podcast for more information.